Hey, Pete. Where are my 10 mils, man? What? What's up? What's up? I don't see my 10 millimeter sockets. Yeah? No, I don't know. Where are they? I don't know where they went. What? They're all gone. They're missing. I don't know. What do you mean you don't know where they are? How can you not know where they are? Why you ask me? Nobody else is in here using any of the tools, yet you don't know where my 10 millimeter sockets are. They were here this morning. I haven't used them yet. I checked my toolbox. They were here. They're gone. What do you mean you don't know? How can you not know? Why would I know where they are? Come on, man. Bob, check the security camera. Look right at it. What? Hey, where are you going? Pete, what are we going to do with you? Today on Crazed Performance Repair, we are continuing a two-part ordeal of machining cylinder heads and why it is important to go through the process of doing so. This video is going to be all about the valves and the valve job and making sure that you grind it and why they warp, when they warp, etc. But because I decided to make it a two-part ordeal and I did not prep, it gives me a little more time to talk about a little bit of the valve job. So let's go ahead and get started with the video. So this video we're going to be talking about the valves and valve grinding and things like that. We have a LS based engine cylinder head here. This is actually the head for the Tahoe here. This is a spare head that I got. This is my personal Tahoe. I recently acquired this as payment, we'll call it. There is a different set of heads in there now. The thing runs, it's great, everything's hunky-dory, but this is a spare head that the guy gave me when he brought me the truck, and this is the one that I use to practice on. But besides the point, these LS-based engines, since we're doing a cylinder head for machining sake on one of those, it's not this head that we're machining in the video, it's a different head. But these valves in these things, the exhaust valves tend to be okay but dirty, so they can leak just a little bit, but the intake valves on these heads are a problem. Now, being this is a two-valve head, and from the factory, the machine work is subpar, we'll just say, but basically, the intake valves are such a big valve and have such a small stem area that there's a good chance it can warp and tweak. Will it leak? Not necessarily. It might be warped and still not leak. And the problem with that is you have that seat, that area that comes up and it contacts the seat, the valve contacts the seat, and every time it does that, there's enough spring pressure on these rather large, very hard to push down springs that I can't even... Oh, there, I can move it by hand, barely. But these springs are pretty hefty, so they put a lot of pressure on that seat. They have a lot of seat pressure pushing down on it. This one's got a bunch of trimmings on it yet. They put a bunch of seat pressure on this valve here, and it can actually straighten out the valve to a certain amount of warpage. That's a problem, though, still, even though it doesn't leak, because it's doing that on and off. It's basically taking your piece of metal, and you're going like this. You're bending it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, just forever, like just endless cycles of that. It can weaken the stem and eventually break the stem, dropping the valve into the engine, catastrophic failure. So if you have the head off, you're definitely going to want to go through and do a valve job, just in case either it's going to leak, maybe it's a little warped. If it happens to be perfect, at least you have the know-withal, or how would I phrase that? At least you have the ability to know now that your head is good to go. You don't have to worry about it. Versus, should I have done that? Should I have not? Am I okay? Am I not? Etc. So, let's get started with continuing my video and doing the actual valve grind and then talking about the seats, though I'm not going to grind the seats in this video. So, okay, we are standing here at the valve grinder. I have a valve chucked up in here. You can see right now it is not touching the stone, right? Now, what I want to display to you people, you folks, is this how bent valves are and why a valve job's important. Now, the other head that I did, the other 4 valves that I did were really good, and I just got to this set of intake valves for this head, and it turns out the first one I go to do is bad. It's got quite a bit of movement to it. Unfortunately, I can't show you guys what I want to show you when it comes to these things being out of round. And by that, I mean I'd like to have the machine running and let you guys hear when it cuts, because it'll go shk, shk, shk. And it's very, very obvious. And then you can see the clear pattern issue on here. But this machine is really loud. So, because this machine is so loud, I can't do that. What I can do instead, though, since I have this super close to touching, is I can turn this guy, okay? Oh, I'm not close enough. This thing's not moving it yet. There we go. Now it's got a little tension on it. So I'm going to go until I just barely touch it. Come on. There we go. All right. You can hear it here now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this wheel, which turns the valve, and that is in the tightening fashion for this wheel. And it'll turn the valve, and you'll be able to hear when it contacts the stone and then when it comes off the stone. So it's off the stone, contacting the stone, off the stone, contacting the stone. Now, I do have this thing rather zeroed in, rather dialed in. I only have about 3/4 of a thou, maybe maximum run out. Typically, it's closer to half a thou, but it kind of depends on how everything sets up. The little locks versus the collet versus the, everything. If anything is off just a small bit, if I have a little bitty speck of dust sitting in here on one side, a little speck of sand or something, not sand, but I do bead blast these, so there might be a little bit of the dust from the bead blaster on here, even though I wipe it down. And if that stuff's on here on one side a little bit more than anywhere else, then it will affect how this thing shows up. So it is off just a little bit right now. I'm going to pull the valve off since I scratched it. Actually, I'm going to scratch it a little more first, so we can see where it's really scratching it. We're going to pop it out of here. Of course, I got to pull this back. There we go. All right, I'm going to see if I can see it first. Okay, I can't see it very well, but what I can do instead is I can grind it at this very minimal position. I'll just barely touch it, and then we'll pull it out and show you what it's doing. All right, I'm going to grind this thing until I see just the hint of a shiny spot on one side of this valve. That one was actually bad enough you could probably hear it. So I'm sure I'm going to let this thing play for you. I'm sure I let it play for you guys so that you could hear it. But it was very, very obvious on this valve. And the only reason I knew that ahead of time was because I was turning it like that and I felt how uneven it was. Okay, so we can see how bad it is now. It's not as bad as it sounded, though. Alright, so we're going to try and get the light just right for you guys so you can see it. I'm going to spin it around here. So you see how it's got a really thin cut at the top there. Really thin line. And then if I turn it, the line's really wide right there. And then it thins out over here. And then it gets really wide again. That's because this thing is just slightly bent or slightly uneven. So that is why it's very important to have your valves ground whenever you pull them off. The intakes are typically always like that. In fact, just in case, I'm just going to go ahead and leave this camera run right where we're at, and we will see if we can hear anything. Actually, I'm going to move it over, but yeah, I'm going to let it run for you guys, and if there's anything here as far as being funky, I'm going to leave that part of the video in there, and you guys can hear it play that. Now the last cut I did, that's cutting the stems down. And typically I would not cut that much. However, because of this particular cylinder head, I'm cutting a little more than I normally would, which is unfortunate. These valves, I mean, they don't have much margin anyway. Once you grind them once, they're pretty much hashed. There's very little margin to work with. I got it so that I still have a little bit of a margin on the edge. I won't be able to show you on camera. It's just not going to work. So they are still good for this round. Next round, they're going to need valves. However, this head is the head that I had to do all the machining to, where I fixed the spark plug hole. Because of that, I had to do a little extra grinding on the seats. Since I had to grind the seats a little bit more than usual, this is ground, which means the valve is going to move up. The seats are ground down, which means the valve is going to move up more. So I have to grind the stems a little bit more than the typical amount. So stems are going to ground a little bit excessively. So I'm going to do one final step here that I normally also wouldn't have to do, because when you grind the stems, typically you're just barely kissing them, and I actually ground a decent amount off. I'm going to go ahead and round off the very edge where that grinder was contacting, because that way when I go to push it through, it won't ruin the valve stem seal. So this is a Crazed belt. It's very gentle. It really does not do a whole lot, but it's great for deburring things or sharpening things. If you needed to sharpen like a knife or a chisel or something, you can get a really fine sharpen on that thing by using a Crazed belt. Hear how loud it is there. Backer? No backer. And now I get to assemble and test everything. Make sure that I have no valve leaks. Make sure I have no weird coolant leak because of this situation. If you haven't seen the video on this, it is on the subscription model as well. So if you want to subscribe to figure out more about that, you can certainly do that. It's a very, very cheap paid subscription because I really just want to have something out of it. I'm doing a bunch of extra videos on the paid subscription. Until it takes off, then maybe later on the new members from there on out will get a little bit higher price. But the introductory rate right now is really cheap. It's like 32 bucks. Don't quote me. I forgot. I think it's only like 32 bucks per year for the main subscription right now, which is, I think it's like $2 a month or something like that. No, wait, that'd be 24. Maybe it's 24. Might have been $3 a month. I don't remember if it was $2 or $3 a month, but it's really, really cheap because I don't need that much. I really don't. I just need something for my little extra time I put into it. And there's no advertisements, all that fun stuff. So, all right. I'm going to go ahead and assemble this thing, test for valve leaks. Well, I guess I got to clean it out a little bit first before I assemble. You can see I have the exhaust valves done. You know what? For shits and giggles, I'm going to give you an idea of the margins here. This one I was doing some testing. I got permanent marker on there. But basically, when I test, I have to put a little marker on here, put it in there, spin it, make sure it contacts all the way around on both faces. If it does, it's going to seal great. If it doesn't, it's not going to seal, and I have to figure out what the hell I did wrong. So far, I haven't had any issues, but I want to show you the margin difference between the exhaust and intake valves if I can get a view at it. I don't think I can, but maybe with the two of them together I can. I doubt it's visible, being this thing's such a small camera screen. I can't see it at all, but I doubt even on a bigger screen it's going to be big enough. This one has what probably to you guys looks like a knife edge, but there's about a 5 to 10 thousandths margin on this edge here, probably 10 thousandths. And then this one here, you got a huge amount of material, which you need for an exhaust valve, because the exhaust valve gets a lot hotter than the intake valve, obviously. It's exhausting the burnt gases, so a lot of heat is going by that, and you can't have something really thin like this on an exhaust valve. If that exhaust margin gets too thin, valve is trash. There's plenty of material on this one yet. This one more cut, and it's trash. So, like I said, I'm going to get this assembled, and hopefully this is a cool little video for you guys to give you some more information cylinder head-wise. And like, share, subscribe, and as always, I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.